Hey everyone, it's Aubrey, recovering perfectionist, queen of distraction / gardener, and we are back for another weekly garden tour. And I think this is going to be the last official garden tour of the spring. Last week's garden tour didn't end up happening. I was in Las Vegas and my husband was supposed to take over the garden tour for the week, but that didn't happen. He had his hands full with boys, so I get it. It will be okay. Here we are today. We're going to do a walkthrough of the garden and talk about the things that have happened. Weather-wise, we have really just had a ton of rain. There's been some sunny days here and there. I think that when I was gone in Las Vegas, it was about 107 there. I think it was in the 70s here, and pretty decent weather. But since I've been back, it's really just been cloudy and rainy or sunny. It just kind of depends. I'm curious to see when we actually roll into summer, maybe within the next week or two. But for right now, we're still like very much like a typical Pacific Northwest spring, and I honestly don't really know what else I should expect from where we live. I will say I am thankful for the rain because I got the Rona when I was in Vegas, and I was not like miserably ill, but watering the garden didn't really sound like an activity that I wanted to partake in. And I think that since I've been back, I haven't had to water in the garden at all, and it's Monday today and I've been back since Wednesday, so that was nice to have that off of my plate. I do think that we are at the point now where once we have a few consistent days of sun, I'm going to put the fan sprinkler up in the garden so I won't have to water that by hand anymore. Before I find something else to ramble on about, let's just get started. Alrighty, so first we're going to start here. The pots at the steps, I don't know if any of you recall the sad, shambled state that they've been in. My mom had planted those 2 years ago, or 3, and they've kind of just been like chugging along with the perennials that were in there. But we popped some new things in here before I left for my trip. I think it just really adds a lovely pop of color that I really didn't realize this area desperately needed. And then I do have my cilantro here. I wish I would have planted more, so we'll see how much I'm actually able to get from this, but I've been picking from it here and there for our last couple dinners. Josh and Jackson have slept out in the tent the last 2 nights. Actually, Alec joined them last night as well, and it sounds like it was pretty rough. Before we go in the garden, we're going to take a look at the flower teepee. This thing has blown over, I don't know how many times over the course of the last few weeks since I put it up. I probably should have just waited until all of the flowers were actually established, and right now there really is not as much coming up as I expected, which is a little disheartening. I might end up just having to scratch this, but I'm not giving up just yet. I'm also pretty positive that every time the thing falls over, it ends up disturbing any sprouts that are about to come up. Also, oh gosh, there's another one. Over here, I dug up, it was like 3 or 4 kale plants, and there's another one right there that I missed. Jackson said, it's probably because one time I chewed up some kale and I spit it there. I mean, maybe there's something to it. So the 2 older kale plants that were here, I ended up pulling out. And then these are the wee things that I popped in here. And I need to do more slug bait in here. But the onions that I planted in here, oh look, that one's... I'm curious to see what ends up happening here. I was not expecting a bloom though, but that'll be pretty. And then I had put a bunch of parsley seeds in here. I'm not seeing anything, which is disappointing because I really need parsley. But the nasturtiums are looking okay, other than some obvious snackage from something. But over here, the kale and broccoli or whatever I planted is doing really well. And then look at the lettuce. Oh, I'm just a proud lettuce mom. And then look at that. This bed just, it makes me so happy. This kale is beautiful. I need to cut those chives back, but we're already starting to see quite a few shelling peas. They're not ready just yet. I need to get that through the boys' heads. And then I'm very curious to see what ends up happening with this broccoli. And then we've got, oh my gosh, just so many strawberries trying to escape and so much growth down there. I'll have to thin that at some point, but we are looking like we're going to be getting a ton of strawberries, and I am terribly excited. Look at all that. I am trying to experiment with sticking those in there and seeing if I can get it to climb this wall somehow, because I mean, there is dirt in there. And then the calendula back in there is doing so much better since I put some slug bait down. And then over in this area, I had planted our very sad jalapeno plants and then had Josh put in jalapeno seeds next to all of those. And it looks like most of those have a little sprout next to them. So I will end up pulling out the original plant and letting the new growth have that space. And then my mom does have some jalapeno plants that she's going to give me and some cayenne pepper plants as well. So we should be good pepper-wise. Fingers crossed. The bell pepper plants that I had planted, I forgot about those because they just looked like a sad dead weed. So I don't think I ended up watering that section of the garden. Whoops. So maybe next year. And then up here, these pumpkin plants are still doing so great. I don't think I planted something there. I don't know what that is. But the edamame, not all of the seeds came up. And then, did I put tomatoes there? I'm feeling so disconnected from everything, just like from being gone and then like in a not so stellar mental state for a while, but we'll figure everything out. It's going to be okay. And then the miscellaneous squash are doing well, and then that nasturtium down at the end. And these are all cucumber plants that I had dug up from our compost pile and just popped those in there. They were looking a lot better when I had originally pulled them out, but fingers crossed that these will end up, you know, kind of settling into this area and taking off. And then this is some dill that our neighbor gave us. She had sent it home with Josh one day and he didn't tell me about it for a while and it dried up a little bit. So we'll see if that ends up making a comeback. I need to just dig up one of those garlic and see what's going on because I haven't a clue. And I also need to put this very, very sad tomato plant in the ground and give it some fertilizer. But the broccoli rabe over here, I ended up just pulling that out and giving it to the chickens. But our carrots are just really filling in. The boys are going to love that. And then not all of the beans that I planted ended up coming up, but it looks like we've got a last minute sprout right there, so we'll see what happens there. I'll probably end up just plugging in some filler seeds in those gaps and then probably filling in this section with carrots as well, and I'll likely clear this out and put some tomato plants that my mom has for me in there, and then beans on this side, and I might fill the spaces in between the tomatoes with carrots as well, because as I've talked about before, I need to plant more carrots for my carrot loving boys. Let's see. All right, and this is the part where I try not to trip over a tomato cage or get stabbed with the end, but this bed is just, I'm feeling so good about it. The cabbage, oh, it's just looking so amazing. I really think that putting the green onions made a difference. And then I have a nasturtium coming up there. I don't think I planted that seed. And then just some random sunflowers. I'm just gonna leave them. And then those beans are popping up. Again, we've got some gaps, but we'll see. Maybe things will come up later. Oh, there's a little nasturtium in there as well. I did have a ton of nasturtium coming up over here last year, and I wonder if somehow like the seeds just went up and into there, you know, birds, animals, what have you. I did let it just drop all its seeds before I pulled it out, and there's a bunch coming up. I'm just gonna leave that. But these two cherry tomato plants were definitely the winners. I need to water that. That seems pretty dry for how much rain we've had, but there's some little blooms already. Fruits of my labor, finally. Oh my, that grapevine. I was feeling kind of sad about the garden for a while, but I don't know. I'm having hopes again. This whole section here, I was talking about just taking out the things that I could plant elsewhere and just letting the lawn fill that in. And my mom was like, well, if you weed eat and if you guys mow before the grass goes to seed, then you wouldn't have that problem. Well, I mean, we've got a whole big old giant field of grass out there, so I don't know what to tell you. So I'm very grateful for her clearing that out. I don't know honestly what I want to do with it though. I'm considering sectioning it off there, letting that fill in, and then moving everything that's in there that is actually something to another location. I have a lavender plant down at the end that I was thinking about putting over here with my lavender plant that I had started from seed, and just filling this in with lavender. Let's see, there's a little sunflower and another one that I had popped in. I had planned some vining, like morning glories and stuff down there, and only a few have popped up. Normally things seem way better in the flower department than the vegetable, but not so much. And then this bed is looking generally sad as well. I think there's some sunflowers coming up there. My zinnias, I need to fertilize everything, that's what it is. And these are some pansies that were in those pots originally over by the stairs. And then we have this bag of sunflower seed. Josh was going to grow sunflower sprouts for the chickens. That hobby did not end up taking off. So we've got this giant bag of sunflower seeds in the greenhouse that mice get into, and they scatter sunflower seeds all over the place. And there were a bunch growing in here that I had transferred out to a few different places in the yard. I've also been feeding the birds that, and random sunflowers have been popping up all over the place. I need to pick it up and put it somewhere else like a responsible homeowner instead of feeding the rodents, but also I think mice are cute. I don't know what to tell you. I am who I am. Alrighty, so down the janky brick road a bit further, my chamomile is starting to bloom. I'm very excited about that. No luck with the zinnias that I planted there, but this is a sunflower that Jackson started in his classroom, and so I'm really excited to see how that grows. And then the grape, we're gonna have to figure out, I think this summer, some kind of like trellis situation, because this has easily quadrupled in size since we planted it in the fall. And then no cucumbers down there yet, but I've got a nice nasturtium. And then those sunflowers that I had tucked in there are looking really great. Gosh, just over here I need to weed. It looks like trash, and I do not see any cucumbers that have come up. I see a lot of self-heal and pineapple weed. Oh, look, I don't think Josh watered over here while I was gone. But there's some sad loofah gourd, and it looks like one that I had planted ended up coming up. I just really want some loofah gourd. Is that too much for a girl to ask for? 2 of my zucchini plants out of like the 7 that had come up are actually still there, which I had told my mom that I don't want any zucchini plants because I always end up with way too much zucchini. And it looks like there's half of one there. But yeah, well, that's disappointing. I need to prioritize getting that bed weeded before I really focus any more on doing any weeding in the path and the garden. I also need to focus on this bed. I've been trying to like maintain areas that are clear, so they don't get out of hand, but then in the meantime also letting this stuff get out of hand. Like I need to do a ton of weeding in there. This is a watermelon that is coming up. I had to replant all of the seeds in the mounds that Alec and all the melon plants that we had planted a few weeks ago came up and are gone, which slugs. We've just had so much rain that the slugs, even the slugs have annihilated everything. And I did end up getting slug bait out, but it was just too late in some situations. But check out like how much this has filled in. And I know some of that is weeds, but also some of it isn't. I'm pretty sure, yeah, that's that pineapple weed. So that I'll end up probably pulling out. But we've got quite a few sunflowers. and I'm excited to see that larkspur. And then this bed from Herbs Past, we really haven't used this in the last couple of years, and we've kind of just been like taking chives and onions and mint out of it. The boys play in it more than anything actually grows in it, and it's starting to fall apart. So I think we're gonna do, you know, let the boys have their mud bog for one more year, and then we'll probably take that down. Josh really wants to expand the porch and do some kind of cover. He was talking about coming out to like here. I think here would be fine. I don't want to lose this valuable lawn space. I just think it's really important. Jackson has his friend over right now and they're playing. And then this is filling in as well. Not quite as much. There's so much prickly lettuce in there, which is a weed. And then I need to figure out something to fill in that middle space. But I did get 2 peonies this year. My peony tubers that I had planted, I think 3 years ago in here, have grown foliage, never any actual blooms. So I raised those up this year, got 1 bloom on that plant, nothing on that one. And then one of the peony plants that I had brought over from my mom's house this year in the front bed also bloomed. So that was really exciting. We need to figure out something for our raspberry bush, but I've just been using Irish Spring soap in those little bags for like deer deterrent. And last year we had absolutely no raspberry bush. In the apple trees, I have a little baggie for those as well, and those are also doing really well. So I'm terribly excited for raspberries, and the blooms are gone for the most part, but the bees were really loving that. Oh my gosh! I have to keep that a secret from the boys because they will try and eat that. Also, that made me think of a very tiny frog that I saw yesterday. And I had a dream a few nights ago that I had a very tiny frog on my finger, and then I saw a very tiny frog outside. So that was cool. I mean, that was that. Also, speaking of outside, the back 40 is kind of drying up. Like, it's been raining so much, but also everything is drying up. So I need to show you guys a clip of that because that's kind of exciting to see the transition from so much wet and swamp and water over the course of the fall and winter and spring, and like see things transition into our dry desert. But over here, these are some kind of squash that I dug up from the compost, and then these are all those mini pumpkins that I had planted, and also just a lot of weeds. I still haven't gotten around to planting any of the sunflowers that I had talked about planting in there, but I will do that eventually. Oh look, this yarrow that I really need to plant is blooming. And then the echinacea that I planted in there is not dead. I'm just sick of you all. He'll be back tomorrow night. Okay, let's see. Up here, my mom popped in a bunch of her zinnia plants, and hers are doing, I think, far better than mine were, but actually, I don't know if those were hers or mine. All of my zinnia plants were like a pink salmon color, and I think that my mom's are a different color. So I think that that will be fun. This is an area of the yard that my mom keeps trying to make a thing, and it's kind of like fetch. Like, fetch isn't going to happen. She really wants to plant a clematis because she hates our utilities box, and she wants to cover that up. The clover that Alec and I planted here to see if we could, you know, possibly do a clover lawn is doing really well. And then all of the weeds over here in Josh's front yard, because he lives out here now for work, is all doing really good. But I need to give these guys some space, and it's probably time to just do some slug bait around these and take these little lids off to give them some room to grow. But again, I need to remind the boys not to run them over with their bikes. And I never did end up thinning those. Well, that one's gone. And that one's, oh my gosh, that one's so exciting. Alrighty, well, I think that's all the things. I think we covered everything. Thank you guys for tagging along with me for another garden tour. Thank you for dealing with me while I was down in the dumps. I appreciate everybody who's still sticking around after that. And then Tomorrow, I will tell you all about my Vegas trip, which was so wonderful. It was so good to get away and just be responsibly irresponsible. Like, I didn't do anything crazy, but it was just so nice to only have myself to worry about. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Like, I had so much fun that Josh and I are considering going back in August, which might be insane, and just do that for our anniversary trip. We were thinking Hawaii, but we could literally stay and fly to Vegas for the same price as one of our tickets to go to Hawaii. So that might be a thing. Why is there so much stuff making noise? There's so many airplanes, so many cars. I'm just trying to say goodbye. Okay, well, all right, that is all for real. You know, I always find something else to talk about. I will see you next week for another garden tour. I hope you have a beautiful weekend, and I'll see you in summer. As always, I love you. Have fun and be kind.